I sit here staring at my phone, reading yet another guilt-tripping message from my mother about how I should give my half-sister one of my apartments. The audacity of her request doesn't surprise me anymore. No matter how many times I block her number, she finds new ways to reach me. Text messages, emails, even comments on social media, all demanding the same thing. To understand why I'm so adamant in my refusal, we need to go back 20 years. I was 6 when my world fell apart. Mom sat me down one evening in our living room, her face oddly calm as she twisted her wedding ring, and told me she'd fallen in love with someone else. Dad was moving out. I remember watching him pack his things, while Mom hovered impatiently by the door, checking her watch every few minutes. Mom didn't waste any time. The ink was barely dry on the divorce papers when she married Steve, and he moved into our house. Everything changed overnight. My princess drawings disappeared from the fridge, replaced by Steve's work schedule. My favorite cereal vanished from the pantry because Steve preferred healthy breakfast options. It was like someone had taken my home and rearranged everything just slightly wrong. Dad sent regular alimony checks and tried to see me when he could, but his business kept him busy. Our visits grew shorter and less frequent, always interrupted by urgent phone calls about meetings and deals. Then, when I was 8, my half-sister arrived. I still remember standing in the hospital hallway, watching through the glass as Mom cradled her new baby, with Steve beaming beside them. That was the moment I became invisible in my own home. They named her Lisa, and suddenly, everything revolved around her schedule, her needs, her wants. "Rachel, keep it down," became Mom's favorite phrase. "The baby's sleeping." "Rachel, go to your room," Steve would say. "Your mother needs to focus on the baby." "Rachel, we can't help with your homework right now." "Lisa has a fever." "Rachel, eat dinner in your room tonight." "Lisa's fussy and needs quiet." I grew up with a roof over my head and food on my plate, but love and warmth were luxuries I didn't get to experience. My bedroom became my sanctuary and my prison. I'd spend hours there, doing homework, reading books, or just staring at the ceiling, trying to make myself as small and quiet as possible. Steve made no secret of his dislike for me. He'd sigh heavily whenever I entered a room, or mutter under his breath about baggage from the past. Late at night, I'd hear them talking through the thin walls of my bedroom, their voices carrying clearly in the quiet house. "She should be living with her father," Steve would say. "She doesn't belong here. Look how she mopes around the house. She's making Lisa uncomfortable." "We can't send her away," Mom would reply in a harsh whisper. "Mark's alimony is too important. We need that money. Have you seen how much Lisa's dance classes cost? Besides, the mortgage." Those whispered conversations taught me everything I needed to know about my place in this family. I wasn't a daughter, I was a paycheck. A means to an end. A necessary inconvenience they tolerated for the monthly deposits my father made into their account. Every time I heard them talk like that, a little piece of my heart would harden, building up walls that would eventually become impenetrable. As I grew older, the distance between me and my mother's family grew into a canyon. Every summer vacation became a stark reminder of where I stood in their hierarchy. While they packed their bags for beach resorts and theme parks, I'd be shuttled off to Dad's place like an afterthought. "We just can't afford an extra ticket, Rachel," Mom would say, not quite meeting my eyes. "But you'll have fun with your father, won't you?" The truth was, I did have fun with Dad, even though our time together was punctuated by business calls and urgent meetings. He'd sit with me during breakfast, his phone constantly buzzing, looking at me with guilty eyes. "I'm sorry, Princess," he'd say for the 100th time. "The business is really taking off, and I need to be available. But look what I got you." And out would come the latest iPhone, or a new laptop, or the newest gaming console. I remember the day he gave me my first MacBook. His eyes lit up watching me open it. "This is for all those weekends I had to cancel," he said. "I know it doesn't make up for it, but..." "It's perfect, Dad," I told him, and I meant it. Not because of the expensive gift, but because of how his face brightened when I hugged him. But my happiness would always be short-lived. The moment I returned home with any new gadget, the storm would begin. "A MacBook?" Lisa would screech, her face turning red. "That's not fair. I want one too." She'd stomp her feet, tears streaming down her face, even though she was 8 years younger and barely knew how to use a computer. "Look what you've started," Mom would hiss at me, while Steve stood in the corner, arms crossed, glaring as if I'd committed a crime. The pattern was always the same. Lisa would throw a tantrum, Mom and Steve would pace around anxiously, and within a week, they'd cave and buy her the same thing. It didn't matter if she was too young for it or didn't need it, she had to have exactly what I had. One particularly bad episode involved an iPad Pro. Lisa's meltdown lasted 3 days straight. "I hate you," she screamed at me. "You always get better stuff. It's not fair." Mom finally snapped. I overheard her angry phone call to Dad that evening. "Mark, this has to stop," she demanded. "These expensive gifts are causing problems in my household. Lisa gets upset, and we can't afford to keep matching your presents. Either buy something for both girls or don't buy anything at all." The next weekend, Dad picked me up looking more serious than usual. We drove to our favorite diner, and over chocolate milkshakes, he broke the news. "Rachel, honey," he started, "your mom called me about the gifts." My heart sank. "I'm sorry, Dad. I don't mean to cause trouble." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No, you haven't done anything wrong. But I think we need to be smarter about this. I won't be giving you any more expensive gadgets." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment, but then he smiled. Instead, he continued, lowering his voice, "I've opened a college fund for you. By the time you graduate high school, you'll be able to go to any university you want." My eyes widened. "Really? Really? But this has to be our secret, okay? Don't tell your mom or anyone else. This is just between us." I nodded eagerly, feeling for the first time like I had something truly mine, a future that nobody could take away or demand to share. The day I graduated high school should have been filled with celebration. Instead, just a week later, I found myself sitting at our dining table, pushing food around my plate while Mom cleared her throat. "Rachel," she said, setting down her fork. "Now that you've graduated, we need to discuss something important." I already knew what was coming. The way she'd been eyeing my room lately, the whispered conversations with Steve, it wasn't hard to guess. "Lisa needs her own space now that she's 10, Mom continued. "She's growing up, and your room would be perfect for her. It's time for you to move out." Steve nodded vigorously beside her, while Lisa bounced in her chair with excitement. I kept my face neutral, took a sip of water, and said, "Actually, I was planning to leave anyway. I'm going to college in the fall." Mom's eyebrows shot up. "College? We can't afford that, Rachel. You know our financial situation." "Dad's paying for it," I replied, watching their faces transform. The relief that washed over them was almost comical. Steve's shoulders relaxed, and Mom's tight smile loosened. "Oh," she said. "Well, that's good then." I spent the next day packing my life into boxes. The walls of my room, already bare from years of not being allowed to put up posters, "It'll damage the paint, Rachel," seemed to close in on me. Through the thin walls, I could hear Mom and Steve talking in their bedroom. Finally, Steve was saying, his voice gleeful, "No more dealing with Mark's daughter. And the alimony payments will stop too." "I know," Mom replied. "I was worried we'd have to keep her around longer." This worked out perfectly. Their words should have hurt, but I felt nothing but relief. 2 days later, I loaded the last box into Dad's car. Dad had taken a whole week off work, the first vacation he'd had in years, and surprised me with tickets to Hawaii. As our plane took off, I watched my hometown disappear beneath the clouds, feeling lighter with each mile we put between us and that house. "I thought we could use some father-daughter time before college starts," he said, squeezing my hand. For the first time in years, his phone stayed off. We spent our days on the beach, trying to surf, badly, eating at local restaurants, and talking, really talking, about everything and nothing. In the evenings, we'd sit on our hotel balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors I'd never seen back home. One night, as we watched the waves crash against the shore, Dad turned to me. "I'm sorry it took me so long to do this," he said quietly. I leaned my head against his shoulder, breathing in the salt air and the faint scent of his aftershave. "You're here now," I replied. "That's what matters." College felt like breathing fresh air after years of suffocation. I moved into my dorm room that fall, armed with determination and the knowledge that Dad had my back. But I wanted to stand on my own feet too, so I got a job at the campus cafe, the daily grind. "Rachel, you don't have to work," Dad insisted during one of our calls. "I can send you a monthly allowance." "I know, Dad, but I want to," I replied, balancing my phone while wiping down tables. "It feels good earning my own money." Between classes, study sessions, and work shifts, I built a life that was entirely my own. My coworkers became friends, my professors became mentors, and slowly, the weight of my past began to lift. I loved the rhythm of my new life: early morning study sessions before my first class, afternoon shifts at the cafe, and late nights in the library with my study group. Dad's business was booming, and he bought a beautiful house in a quiet suburb. During holidays, I'd stay with him, marveling at how peaceful life could be. We'd spend evenings in his home theater or by the pool, and he'd tell me about his plans for the company's expansion. "I have something special planned for when you graduate," he'd say with a mysterious smile. "Dad, paying for my college is already more than enough," I'd protest, but he'd just shake his head and change the subject. Every time I visited, the house felt more like home. I had my own room there, decorated exactly how I wanted it, something I'd never been allowed in my mother's house. Dad even gave me a key, telling me I could come anytime, even when he was away on business trips. Meanwhile, my mother's world continued spinning without me in it. Her social media was a shrine to Lisa: dance recitals, school events, family vacations. Sometimes, relatives would comment on her posts. "How's Rachel doing? Haven't seen her in ages." Mom's replies were always the same: "Oh, she's doing well, living her adult life." As if I was some distant acquaintance she'd lost touch with, not her firstborn daughter. She had no idea I was making Dean's List every semester. Didn't know I'd been promoted to shift supervisor at the cafe. Couldn't tell you what I was majoring in or who my friends were. My life had become a fill-in-the-blank space in her story, and she seemed perfectly content to leave it empty. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of the opportunity Dad had given me. Between classes and work, I joined the business club and even started tutoring younger students in economics. My professors started talking about graduate school possibilities, and for the first time, I could see a clear path forward for my life. One day, scrolling through my feed, I saw a photo of Lisa's 12th birthday party. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, and Mom had tagged every relative except me. "Our little princess is growing up so fast," the caption read, followed by a dozen heart emojis. I stared at the image for a long moment, then closed the app. That night, as I locked up the cafe, I realized I didn't feel the ache I expected. Instead, I felt light, unburdened, like I'd finally put down a heavy bag I'd been carrying for years. Graduation day was bright and sunny. I spotted Dad in the crowd immediately. He was the one cheering the loudest when they called my name. After the ceremony, while families took photos and celebrated, he pulled me aside with a mysterious smile. "Close your eyes and hold out your hands," he said. I felt something metal drop into my palm. Opening my eyes, I saw a set of keys with a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked, opening the envelope to find an address. "Your graduation present. An apartment in your name, back in hometown. Fully furnished and ready for you to move in." I burst into tears, throwing my arms around him. "Dad, this is too much." "Nothing's too much for my little girl," he said, hugging me tight. The apartment was perfect, modern, spacious, in a quiet neighborhood. I found a job at a local marketing firm, settled into a comfortable routine, and rarely thought about my mother's family anymore. Life was good, simple, peaceful. Then came the phone call that changed everything. The tests came back positive, Dad said, his voice unusually quiet. It's stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The next 2 years became a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and desperate searches for experimental treatments. I watched my strong, vibrant father grow weaker day by day. He fought hard, we both did, but cancer doesn't fight fair. On a rainy Tuesday morning, holding my hand, he took his last breath. He was just 54. I handled the funeral arrangements in a daze. Posted about it on social media, tagging Mom out of obligation more than hope. Her response came hours later. Sorry, but I'm too busy to attend my ex-husband's funeral. Lisa has a dance recital that day. Even in my grief, I couldn't say I was surprised. The reading of the will left me speechless. Dad had left me everything, his company, the house, several investment properties. His lawyer handed me a letter. Dear Rachel, I built all this for you, princess. I'm sorry I can't be there to see what you'll do with it, but I know it'll be something amazing. Take care of yourself first, then others if you can. Love, Dad. I hired Marcus Chen, Dad's trusted VP, to run the company as CEO. He had the experience I lacked, and I knew Dad would approve. Meanwhile, I found my own way to honor his memory, establishing a foundation to help cancer patients and their families. The day we launched the foundation, I stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. No one should fight cancer alone, I said, my voice steady, despite the tears in my eyes. And thanks to the Mark Anderson Memorial Foundation, no one will have to. That night, alone in my apartment, I looked at Dad's photo on my desk. I hope I'm making you proud, I whispered. The company was thriving, the foundation was helping people, and somehow, through all the grief, I was still standing. Maybe that's what he'd been preparing me for all along. My phone rang on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The name on the screen made my heart skip, Mom. After 9 years of silence, she was calling me. Rachel, can you come over? It's important. Her voice sounded different, strained, older. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Walking up to my old house felt surreal. Mom opened the door, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged dramatically, her face lined with pain. Steve hovered behind her, and there was Lisa, now 19, watching me with curious eyes. In the living room, nothing had changed, same furniture, same photos of Lisa everywhere. Mom lowered herself carefully into her chair, wincing. I need surgery, she said without preamble. Several surgeries, actually. My joints are deteriorating. Without treatment, I could end up immobile. She paused, wringing her hands. I heard about your inheritance from Mark. About the company, the properties. There it was, the real reason for the reunion. We can't afford the surgeries, Steve added, his pride clearly battling with desperation. The insurance won't cover enough. I studied my mother's face, the same face that had dismissed me, forgotten me, ignored me for years. The same woman who couldn't even attend my father's funeral. But underneath all that history, she was still my mother. I'll cover the medical bills, I heard myself say. Mom burst into tears, pulling me into an awkward hug, our first in years. Stay for dinner, she insisted. We have so much catching up to do. Dinner was a strange affair. Between bites, Mom and Steve peppered me with questions. So, how many properties did Mark leave you exactly? Is the company doing well? Are you selling any of the assets? I deflected each question with practiced ease. The estate is quite complicated, I'd say, or everything's in trusts and legal arrangements. Lisa watched this dance with sharp eyes, eerily similar to how I used to watch Mom and Steve's late-night conversations through the years. As I drove home that night, I wondered if I'd made the right decision. I had the means to help, and despite everything, some small part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The next day, I contacted the hospital to arrange payment for Mom's surgeries. Whatever happened next, at least I knew I'd done what Dad would have wanted, being better than the hurt I'd been given. The surgeries were successful. I paid each medical bill without question, and within months, Mom was walking normally again. That's when the invitations started coming. "Rachel, come for Sunday dinner." "Rachel, we're having a barbecue." "Rachel, Lisa misses you." Each visit felt like walking on eggshells. Mom would reminisce about my childhood, conveniently editing out the painful parts. Steve would ask casual questions about Dad's company. Lisa would watch me with a mixture of expectation and something else I couldn't quite identify. "We're finally a family again," Mom would say, reaching for my hand across the table. But I noticed how her eyes never quite met mine when she said it. When the invitation came for Lisa's 20th birthday party, I decided to make an effort. I bought her the latest iPhone, top model, all the bells and whistles. Maybe it was an attempt to bridge the gap between us, or maybe I just wanted to give her something I knew she'd like. The party was a small affair, just the four of us. No friends, no other relatives. Mom had insisted on keeping it intimate, though now I understood why. Lisa unwrapped the iPhone with barely concealed disappointment. "Oh, thanks," she said flatly, setting it aside without even opening the box. She kept glancing at Mom, as if waiting for something. Then came dinner, and Mom cleared her throat in that way I remembered all too well from childhood, the sound that always preceded something unpleasant. "Rachel, sweetheart," she began, her voice honey-sweet. "The phone is lovely, but we were thinking you could give Lisa something more substantial." I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" "Well," Mom continued, sharing a look with Steve, "we know your father left you several properties. And Lisa's graduating from college soon. Wouldn't it be nice if she had her own place? You have so many apartments, surely you could spare one for your sister?" The room went silent. Steve stared intently at his plate, while Lisa leaned forward, eyes bright with anticipation. This was clearly what they'd been building toward all along. I set down my fork carefully, trying to process what I was hearing. All those family dinners, the sudden interest in my life, the constant invitations, it had all been leading to this moment. "No," I said quietly. "I won't be giving away any of my properties." Mom's sweet expression faltered. "But Rachel, it's your sister. Surely your father would have wanted." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't you dare tell me what my father would have wanted." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Mom's face turned red with anger, while Lisa slumped in her chair, crossing her arms. "How dare you be so selfish?" Mom snapped. "Your sister deserves." "No," I said again, standing up. "What I deserve is to not be used for my money. Not now, not ever." Mom's sweet facade shattered instantly. Her face contorted with rage as she slammed her hands on the table, making the dishes rattle. "You ungrateful little bitch," she screamed. "After everything we've done for you. You're just like your father, selfish and heartless." Lisa shrank back in her chair while Steve stood up, looming over the table. But I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. "Everything you've done for me?" I shot back, standing my ground. "Like throwing me out at 18 the moment Dad's alimony check stopped coming? Like treating me like an unwanted houseguest in my own home? You were never part of this family," Mom shrieked. "You were always in the way, always causing problems. And now you have all this money and won't help your own sister?" She lunged forward, hand raised to strike me. I caught her wrist midair. "Touch me," I said quietly, "and I'll go straight to the police. And then I'll sue you for every penny I spent on your surgeries." The color drained from her face. Steve took a step back. Lisa's mouth hung open. "You wouldn't dare," Mom whispered. "Try me. I'm not that powerless little girl anymore." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, turning back one last time. "Don't call me again. Don't message me. Don't try to contact me through relatives. We're done." That was more than a year ago. Now I sit in my office, looking out over the city as another one of Mom's messages pops up on my phone. They started coming a week after that dinner, first angry, then pleading, then tearfully apologetic. "Please, Rachel, we're family. Your sister misses you. We can work this out." I block each new number, each fake social media account they create. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I'm being too harsh, if I should give them another chance. But then I remember Dad's words from his letter, "Take care of yourself first." So that's what I'm doing. The company is thriving under Marcus's leadership. The Cancer Foundation is helping dozens of families. My life is full of meaning and purpose, built on the foundation of love that Dad provided. Yesterday, I received an invitation to Lisa's graduation. Inside was a handwritten note from Mom, "Please come. We can start over." I dropped it in the shredder without a second thought. Some people say blood is thicker than water, but the family you choose, the bonds you forge through love and trust, those are the ones that truly matter.
This vacation home is exclusively for my parents. I won't let your parents use it. I was dumbfounded by my husband's remarks, having nonchalantly purchased a $1 million vacation home. So that's what this is all about. Having learned his motives, I reached the end of my tether. "Fine, but you're going to regret this, you know." "I won't. Don't ever show your face to me again," Robert said, crossing his arms with a smug grin on his face. "If that's how it is, then I won't hold back. I'll make sure he regrets it," I thought. "My name is Kathy. I married my husband Robert 4 years ago, and we've been living as a couple. Neither of us have any particular hobbies, so our savings kept growing. If I had to name one indulgence, perhaps it would be brewing coffee from beans on a weekend morning. Speaking of which, your mom's birthday is coming up soon, isn't it?" With a freshly brewed coffee in hand, I asked my husband. We were both in our mid-30s. Robert's parents turned 60 this year, a year ahead of my parents. "How about we give them a spa retreat as a gift for their birthdays? It'd be a nice memory, don't you think?" A good idea, right? When I suggested this, my husband agreed. "That might be a good idea. I'll ask my parents if they want anything specific. If not, we'll give them the spa retreat. It'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone." I did mean it like that. I know, just joking. Next time I see my parents, I'll talk to them about it. "Kathy, can you look up some good spas?" "Got it. How about we go on a trip too? It would be nice for a change." 2 weeks passed, and my mother-in-law's birthday was fast approaching. "Hey, we need to make a reservation soon. At this rate, we won't even make it for my father-in-law's birthday. Did you talk to your parents?" I asked hurriedly. In response, my husband answered leisurely, "Oh, did I not tell you? I've already asked their preferences, so it's fine. We don't need to book the spa retreat." "Is that so? Then it's okay, but what did they say they wanted?" Eager to choose the gift together, I asked, but my husband gave me a look that suggested he found it troublesome. "I'll handle everything. It's my parents' 60th birthday. You don't have to get involved, Kathy." I couldn't hide my surprise at Robert's words. He had never brushed me off like this before. "That's not a nice way to say it," I said, getting emotional. "Why won't you tell me? We've always chosen gifts together." Every year, we had decided on gifts for each other's parents together. So why suddenly, at a significant milestone like their 60th birthday, would he say something like this? I didn't understand my husband's thinking and was frustrated. I don't like to boast, but I'm generally a mild-mannered person. I rarely raise my voice, but my husband wouldn't change his mind. In the end, Robert wouldn't tell me what his parents wanted. Since then, there's been an uncomfortable atmosphere between us, and we only communicate about necessary matters. Even when we drink coffee brewed from beans, we remain silent. The day before my mother-in-law's birthday, my husband spoke to me for the first time in a while. "We're going out tomorrow to celebrate Mom's 60th birthday, so get ready, Kathy. We're staying overnight, so be prepared for that too." When he suddenly said we were going out, I panicked. "What? Where are we going?" "If we're staying overnight, you should have said so earlier. I have a lot to prepare." "I just told you, didn't I?" "You're definitely going to be surprised," he said, in high spirits. The next morning, we got into the car early and went to pick up my in-laws. They were very excited. I'm so excited. I never thought I'd get to celebrate my birthday like this. I really can't thank you enough, my mother-in-law gushed. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Robert. Kathy, my father-in-law added. No, happy birthday, Mom, I replied, feeling awkward because I hadn't been involved in choosing the present at all. Even when my in-laws expressed their gratitude, I could only respond vaguely. Then my husband said something surprising. Really, it's all thanks to Kathy. He was backing me up. I was really happy with my husband's consideration. We'd been at odds recently, but it felt like we could go back to our old relationship. My gloomy feelings lifted, and I decided to enjoy the journey to our destination. We arrived at a beautiful cabin nestled in the woods. The entrance was spacious, and the living room had floor-to-ceiling windows, making it quite attractive. The cabin was surrounded by trees, giving it a harmonious feel with nature. There were 3 bedrooms and even a hot tub in the bathroom. We're staying here. It's so lovely. I excitedly talked to my husband and apologized for my previous attitude. I never thought Robert would choose a place like this. I don't think I could have found such a wonderful place. Leaving it to Robert was the right decision. I'm sorry I've been so irritable lately. My excitement skyrocketed at the sight of the beautiful cabin. Then he blurted out something unexpected. It's no biggie. If I were alone, I wouldn't have been able to buy such a cabin. It's because of Kathy that I was able to buy it. What? Suddenly, I was at a loss for words. What was he talking about? As my head filled with questions, my in-laws joined the conversation. Thank you so much, Kathy. We never thought we'd get such a beautiful cabin, my mother-in-law said. We were thinking about setting up a new home when we turned 60 and even considered living together. But remember, we decided not to live together, right? So we thought, we'd love a cabin, and we talked to Robert about it. From the beginning of our marriage, it's true that I declined the offer to live together. I wanted to enjoy our life as a couple, and my in-laws were still in good health. So I thought it was too early for us to live together. Robert agreed with my thoughts, and we decided to live together when my in-laws began to have difficulty with their lives. But I never expected them to ask for a new home as a present for their 60th birthday, especially a cabin. That was going too far. Trying to control my rising panic, I asked my husband, Robert, this is a joke, right? There's no way we could afford to buy such a lovely cabin. What's the point in springing a surprise on me? It's mother-in-law's birthday. The surprise should be for her. It's not a joke. This is a genuine cabin that we bought. What? Upon hearing my husband's reply, everything went dark before my eyes. While I was in a state of shock, he continued, Man, it really saved us. They said I couldn't get a mortgage on my own income. It was a good decision to get a joint mortgage. Hold on a minute. I didn't hear anything about this, I exclaimed. I just told you, he replied nonchalantly. And it's not a bad thing for you, Kathy, is it? You just said it was a lovely cabin. It's ours. That's not the issue, is it? How much did this vacation home cost? My frustration was palpable. He dropped a surprising fact. $1 million. What? $1 million? I was stunned. It was for my parents' 60th birthday. I thought we'd splurge a bit, he said. The amount was more than I could have ever imagined, leaving me dizzy. As if to add insult to injury, my husband began to spill another astonishing fact. We couldn't get a loan for $1 million property in both our names, so I used all the money we've been saving since our marriage, the joint account, as a down payment, he confessed. What? By this point, I was beyond shocked and just plain dumbfounded. How could he be so selfish without even consulting me? I couldn't understand it at all. Despite my shock, my husband continued nonchalantly. Well, it's already bought. Can't do anything about it now. Besides, I took into consideration your option of not living together. Isn't that good enough? In this vacation home, we can do whatever we want. Our vacation times will be more fun, won't they? His carefree attitude was nothing short of exasperating. But now that it had come to this, there was nothing we could do. Just as Robert said, this vacation home was indeed lovely, and our holiday enjoyment would increase. Fine, it's already bought, so there's nothing to be done. But you could have at least consulted me, I muttered. At that, my husband brightened up and laughed. That's more like it. I should have consulted you. I apologize. I wanted it to be a surprise for you too, Kathy. You're quite something, aren't you? Without my knowledge, Robert had gotten a joint mortgage and used our joint savings, but luckily, we didn't have any big expenses coming up. I earned significantly more than Robert and had my own savings. Let's just accept it and think of it as a good purchase. Feeling resolved, I decided to enjoy the grand celebration for my mother-in-law's birthday party and a 2-day stay at the villa. Once home, I brewed a coffee and indulged in the memories of our villa stay. It was surprising, but the villa was really splendid. It had a wood-burning stove in the living room, which would be enjoyable in winter. Feeling happy, I spoke to Robert. "Hey, when are we going back to the villa? I want to get some new dishes for the villa." "Yeah, I'll check with my parents. Can't we go by ourselves?" "Well, the villa is technically in our names, but it was a present for my parents' 60th anniversary. It'd be wrong if they had plans, right?" I had a bad feeling. Even though it was in our names, I thought it might practically become my in-laws' property. I quickly suggested, "As it's our villa, we can invite my parents too, right?" "Yeah, if they're available," he answered non-committally. But he didn't refuse. That was a relief. The villa wouldn't become my in-laws' property. But that was too optimistic. For the past 6 months, I had not been allowed to stay at the villa once. I go there, but I can't stay overnight. I drop my in-laws off at the villa, prepare food, and then have to return home. The next day, I pick them up from the villa, clean up, and drive them back. It's been like this for 6 months. Despite my many complaints, Robert always had some excuse and sometimes even yelled at me. But today, I'm not giving up because soon it will be my parents' birthday. "Hey, Robert, my father's birthday is in 2 months. We can invite them to the villa, right? It's our villa." I emphasized our villa and appealed to Robert. His reply was the same as always. "If my parents don't have plans." That again, it's always the same. We haven't stayed at the villa once in the 6 months since we bought it. It's always your parents who get priority. It's our villa, we should be the priority. Plus, I'm also paying the mortgage and the down payment. My parents should be able to stay too. Today, I'm not backing down. I put my foot down more than usual. Robert frowned and replied, "Shut up. That vacation house is for my parents only. I won't let your parents use it." "I suppose that was part of your plan all along, wasn't it? No wonder you bought the vacation house without telling me." The tolerance I had shown until now snapped in my heart, making a sound as if something had broken. "I'll never forgive you. Don't think you can get away with such selfish behavior." I proposed the following to my husband. "Fine, if that's how it is, I won't hold back any longer. Let's get a divorce." "What the hell? You're such a petty woman." "Well, whatever. I'm quite appreciated by my parents for buying that vacation home, and I'm sure my mom would do the housework. I won't get in trouble at all without you. Of course, if we're getting a divorce, I won't let you use that vacation house." "Still okay with you?" My husband had a triumphant look on his face, crossing his arms with satisfaction. I felt pathetic for falling for such a man's smooth talk, but it's too late to regret it now. All that's left is to get my revenge. I lowered my voice and put pressure on my husband. "You sure you're not going to regret this?" "Like hell I will." "Fine, it's settled then. Don't ever show up in front of me again." The next day, I filed for divorce. It was accepted without issue, and I decided to head back to my parents' house. The call from Robert to my parents' house came a few months later. When I answered the phone, he was in a panic. Is that you, Kathy? What do you want?" "We have nothing left to talk about," I replied coldly. In response, he shouted frantically, "I tried to call your cell phone. Why didn't you pick up? Some person claiming to be your lawyer came to my house today. Hey, this is something you asked for, right? Can you explain it properly to me? What don't you understand? It's exactly as the lawyer said. Since we're divorced, I don't intend to pay the mortgage. If you don't comply, I'm considering selling the vacation house. That's all." But that vacation house is in both our names. Even if we're divorced, it's only natural for you to keep paying the mortgage, right?" He pleaded, sounding desperate. I calmly replied, "Despite being in both our names, I'm not allowed to use it, right? So why do I have to keep paying the mortgage? That's what doesn't make sense to me. But it's a shared property. You should be the one paying. This is going nowhere. That's why I asked a lawyer. If you're going to insist on your point of view, I'm hanging up. If there's anything else, please contact my lawyer. I don't have time to talk to this unreasonable man. I have my own business to take care of." "Hold on. Wait up. I messed up. Let's use the vacation house alternately. Okay, that should be fine, right?" "You're saying keep paying the mortgage and I'll let you use it in turns." I have no attachment to that vacation house anymore. After all, I already bought a new one. Wait, what? Yes, I gifted the vacation house to my parents for their 60th birthday. It's not exactly $1 million estate, but a cozy cottage that they love. Are we done here? I don't have time to be chit-chatting with you. Hold on, please. I quit my job. I know that. What? How? It was probably my father who caused it. My father is an executive in a top-tier company. He has many acquaintances, presidents, and executives of other companies. Robert's company president was one of them. Angry at Robert's treatment toward me, my father must have talked to Robert's company president about it. The president expressed his anger, saying, "How can we have such a person in our company?" I don't know the details from there, but I had heard that Robert chose to resign on his own. I'm sure Robert's company president did something behind the scenes considering the future. "Hey, help me out," Robert pleaded with a tear-choked voice. I started receiving contentious looks from my coworkers. I chose to quit. I found a new job, but the salary is less than before. I can't keep up with the mortgage payments on my home. Your father is the cause, right? Then isn't it his responsibility to continue paying the mortgage? He's so self-centered. How much further will he go to satisfy himself? I was at my limit with his selfish comments. Sure, my father might have caused you to quit your job, but the one who created the initial cause was you, Robert, wasn't it? Don't twist it to suit your narrative. You're the one who's wrong for touching our shared property because you wanted to look good to your parents. You've brought this on yourself. I didn't think it would turn out like this. You reap what you sow. I hope you suffer in the depths of mortgage hell, you selfish jerk. Wait, please. I heard his desperate cry, but I hung up the phone without waiting. In the months following, I negotiated through a lawyer and finally got out of the mortgage for that vacation house. In the end, Robert couldn't continue paying the mortgage on his own, and the vacation house seemed to be sold. Because the property's value had decreased, Robert had ended up in debt. Even his in-laws were flabbergasted, and he is reportedly living a ragged life in a cheap apartment now. His parents, too, are now the talk of the neighborhood for losing the vacation house they were always boasting about. On the other hand, I'm leading busy, fulfilling days as the vice president of my father's company. Now, the happiest times are when the three of us visit the vacation house on our days off and relax with a cup of coffee. Dropping out of middle school can seem sketchy, right? Isn't it? There's a reason for that. No need to explain. Our worlds are just different. Okay, you don't have to put it like that. I'm 33 years old, married, and have been with my husband David for 10 years. We have a first-grade daughter named Betty, making us a family of 3. I've loved drawing since I was a kid, and now I work in the arts. Currently, I'm pregnant with our second child. As my belly grows, each day becomes more challenging. Despite his busy schedule, David tries to come home early and even takes time off work to handle chores and childcare for me. Life was good for our little family, but something started bothering me recently. We live on the first floor of a high-rise apartment building. The other day, while coming back from shopping, I saw a woman moving into our building. It turns out she's Emma, a classmate from middle school. I hadn't seen Emma since a get-together right after middle school. When she noticed me, she said, "Wait, Mary, you live here too?" "Yeah, what about you?" Moving in today." Apparently, Emma had just moved into the building. Her face fell when she realized I was also a resident, living in the same high-rise as a dropout. Unbelievable. You see, I'm a dropout, just like Emma said. I had reasons not to pursue further education after middle school, but I never told Emma. The last time we met, Emma had mocked me for being a high school dropout, and it seemed like nothing had changed. She was still belittling me. Annoyed, I listened as Emma continued, "So what floor are you on?" "I'm on 35. I realized Emma was trying to show off based on the floor number in the apartment building. I answered truthfully, "I'm on the first floor here." Emma's face lit up with smug satisfaction. "First floor? Makes sense. You're a dropout after all. I'll have to invite you up to my 35th floor place sometime. Great views, you know." Emma continued to boast. Emma apparently worked at a major corporation after graduating from college up until last year. Now she plans to start her own business and use this high-rise apartment as both home and office. So that basically makes me the CEO. "Oh, what about you? Do you work?" When Emma asked, I began to explain my work. "Yeah, I'm in the art business. Emma interrupted. Art? You mean like drawing? That's a job. Feeling belittled, I snapped back. I've turned what I love into a career, and it is a real job. Emma ignored me, saying, well, it must be some nice working within the household income. What's your goal, like $900 a month? I just listened in silence, not having the energy. People like you who drop out live in a different world from elites like me. Just then, David and our daughter Betty, dressed in work clothes, walked up. Mom. Oh, Mary, do you know each other? David asked. Emma looked him up and down and laughed. Is this your husband in work clothes? Feeling insulted, I finally snapped back. Why are you laughing? That's rude. Emma continued unapologetically. I wasn't laughing. He's just the type I would expect for a dropout like you. Two-income family on the first floor? He must not make much either. Finally, I had enough of Emma's rudeness. How dare you say that about my husband? Apologize. Emma laughed and said, why would I apologize? By the way, are you pregnant? It was then she finally noticed my pregnancy. Yes, I'm 7 months along, I replied. Must be tough financially with another child on the way. Can you even afford to live here? Emma sneered. I didn't want to hear any more of Emma's snide comments. I grabbed David and Betty and headed home. Emma called out after us, see you. Come up to the 35th floor if you ever want a good view. But I ignored her and went inside. I couldn't shake my anger at Emma all day. Why did she have to say those things? That night, after Betty had gone to sleep, David asked me what had happened. I told him about Emma, how she had made fun of me for being a dropout and belittled my work. David's face turned red, and he seemed even angrier than I was. David knew about my past, including the fact that I dropped out of school, and he chose to marry me with a complete understanding of who I am. We decided to keep our distance from Emma, but the anger towards her didn't seem to subside for a while. Luckily, we didn't run into Emma for a month, allowing us to live our lives peacefully. Then one day we received a postcard for a school reunion. I still get along well with my middle school friends, so after getting a few messages about meeting at the reunion, I decided to go. While I looked forward to catching up with friends, I was also a bit concerned about running into Emma and hearing her unwelcome comments. But thinking that after having a baby I would have fewer chances to meet my friends, I set aside my worries about Emma and decided to attend the reunion. The day of the reunion arrived. The event took place in a rented hotel ballroom. As soon as I arrived, I met up with friends I hadn't seen in years, and we immediately fell into enjoyable conversation. It had been a long time since we had all caught up, and there was so much to talk about. Our friend group has always been tight-knit regardless of gender. Some have become mothers, others fathers, and we all love catching up about our families and careers. But then, out of the blue, we heard Emma's voice from behind. Ew, breathing the same air as poor people is making me sick. As expected, Emma had shown up too. We hadn't noticed her since we were only speaking with friends we were actually close to. Emma was wearing heavy makeup and a flashy dress that seemed out of place. Both my friends and I sighed at her over-the-top appearance and her consistently bad attitude. Even back in middle school, she was self-centered and made awkward comments. She was someone we tended to avoid. Nothing has changed. Even now at 33, she is as obnoxious as ever, and we couldn't help but roll our eyes. One friend finally broke the silence. Emma, who are you calling poor? She replied, who else but Mary? She's a dropout, so she's poor and lives on the first floor. I live on the 35th. It's like a master-servant relationship. Emma laughed after saying this. A few friends were angered by her comments and confronted her. But Emma showed no signs of remorse. She continued, if you don't want to be called poor, why don't we move to an older apartment that suits you? Completely oblivious to the look she was getting, she went on to belittle me. Why don't you just leave, you $900 a month earner, from this reunion and from that fancy apartment building? Hearing this, my friends looked puzzled and asked, Mary, do you only earn $900 a month? I replied, no, that's just what Emma believes. While we were talking, Emma interrupted, what are you two whispering about? Mary's living comfortably on her husband's income, doing a part-time job because she's a dropout and I am a CEO. That's when a mutual classmate nearly spoke up. Emma, do you not know Mary is a well-known artist? Upon hearing this, Emma looked baffled and asked, "An artist? Who cares?" Not wanting to let her arrogance ruin the mood of the reunion any further, I decided to clarify. I actually studied art in France right after middle school. I didn't complete a formal program, so you could say I dropped out. Upon hearing this, Emma scoffed. "What? Studying art is just a hobby, isn't it? You're still a dropout who ran away because you didn't want to study." Emma clearly didn't get it, so I elaborated a bit more. I spent several years training and now I manage an art gallery while also creating my own works. Believe it or not, I have fans and I've even held my own exhibitions. Some classmates here have even bought my art. In reality, I was a young artist known within certain circles. After training in France, I returned to New York and kickstarted my career as an artist, which finally blossomed in recent years. As for David, we met at one of my exhibitions and clicked instantly, which led to marriage. Even with all this explanation, Emma still didn't seem to get it. "Come on, an exhibition is still just play, right? I'm a CEO, I'm clearly winning here." Exasperated, I replied, "This isn't about winning or losing, Emma. You may think I'm foolish for pursuing art, but I take my work seriously." Emma, not wanting to concede, fired back, "Then why are you living on the first floor? If you're making that much money, you should be living on a higher floor." "There is a reason we are living on the first floor," I explained. "We were on a different floor before, but given that I'm pregnant and elevators can take forever here, we moved to the first floor for convenience." Emma seemed unwilling to accept my explanation. My friends all knew about my career, and even classmates I wasn't particularly close to had heard I was an artist. Emma probably never considered that possibility, given that she had zero interest in art and looked down on me for being a dropout. And I had another secret. Just as I was about to reveal this, I saw David and Betty at the entrance. "Mom." Betty came running towards me, followed by David chasing her from behind. David, scratching his head, said, "Sorry about that. Got pulled into some work stuff, so I brought Betty along too." While David and I were talking, Emma blurted out, "Wait, who is this handsome man?" "Your husband. He was in work clothes last time. Why the suit now?" David was indeed dressed sharply today. Emma couldn't take her eyes off him, so different from the work clothes she saw him in before. David began greeting my friends. "Thank you for always being kind to my wife. Is everything to your satisfaction? Please let us know if there is anything you need." Just then, the organizer rushed over. "Thank you for providing this venue for free. The food and drinks are top-notch." "Really? Thank you." The truth was, this hotel belonged to David's parents, and he was now the CEO. David had generously offered the venue free of charge for the reunion. Emma's face turned pale upon hearing this. "You are a CEO's wife?" She had looked down on me as poor, but here I was, an artist and a CEO's wife. Emma seemed to be in complete shock. "Why are you, a dropout, married to someone this wealthy when an elite like me is still single? What did you do to pull this off?" Emma challenged me with a tone of bitterness. David finally noticed Emma and said, "Oh, we have met before. Sorry for being in work clothes the last time. I was helping with a neighborhood cleanup. As the owner of the high-rise apartment, it's important to maintain good relations in the community." Emma's face turned pale. "Wait, you own that high-rise? Your family owns that?" In fact, David owns that high-rise. His family has been wealthy for generations, involved in hotel management and owning multiple properties. "We live in one of those properties, the high-rise in question," I explained. Emma stood there stunned, unable to come up with a retort. David added, "Oh, by the way, we'd like to invite you to the penthouse sometime. It has a great view. You can even see the Empire State Building." Emma was shocked again. "The penthouse? But don't you guys live on the first floor?" Hearing that, I decided to tell her the truth. "I told you before, I'm pregnant, so we made the first floor our home as well. Basically, both the penthouse and the first floor are ours." Emma was speechless, her body limp with disbelief. I noticed that the friends around us had gone silent, listening intently to our conversation. Feeling like I had ruined the atmosphere of the reunion, I began to head for the exit with David and Betty in tow. As I was leaving, Emma mumbled, "A dropout acting so cocky." I turned to my daughter, who could probably hear Emma's comment. "What matters most is what's inside. Never look down on people," I said. Betty nodded and cheerfully replied. Then she turned to Emma and said, "Emma, If you keep making faces like that, happiness will run away from you." Everyone in the room burst into laughter, and the atmosphere improved. Emma, now a laughingstock, ran out of the venue blushing. The reunion proceeded in good spirits, and I enjoyed the rest of the evening with my friends. They too had been mistreated by Emma in the past, so Betty's last words made everyone feel relieved. Months passed, and we never encountered Emma at the high-rise again. One day, when David came home, he told me that Emma had finally moved out of the luxury high-rise. According to David, it turned out Emma had been skipping rent for 3 months. They even had a lawyer come in to issue an eviction notice, and she skipped town almost overnight. Hearing this, I was flabbergasted. David mentioned that the room Emma had rented was left just as it was, furniture, clothes, and all. Apparently, she took her expensive stuff and computer but left everything else as it was. At first, I suspected something shady, but soon after, I got an update on Emma from a friend. It turns out Emma was pretending to be a successful entrepreneur, but in reality, she was practically jobless. She had some savings from her career days, allowing her to live comfortably for a while. But of course, that lifestyle couldn't last. She couldn't pay the rent anymore and had to move out. She didn't even have another place lined up, so she left her furniture and clothes behind because she didn't have the money to dispose of them. Learning the truth, I was thoroughly disgusted by how Emma remained a burden to others till the end. Emma had such a terrible personality that even in her crisis, she had no friends or colleagues who would help her. Now she's living alone in an old apartment, scraping by with part-time jobs to make ends meet. She used to brag about being a lead and look down on me, a college dropout. I bet her pride is shattered now. I can only hope that she learns to live a more humble and earnest life going forward. As for me, I continue to enjoy my life, painting pictures and spending time with my daughter and husband. Our family of 3 gets along wonderfully, and I'm excited that we will soon become a family of 4, including the baby on the way. I intend to keep doing everything I can to protect my family's happiness. It's shallower than I thought. What a letdown, my mother-in-law sneered as she pushed me into the pond. I had endured her cruel antics for so long, but in that moment, something inside me snapped. My name is Jasmine. I'm 30 years old and have been a stay-at-home wife for 7 years. I live with my husband Gordy, who is 8 years older than me, our 6-year-old daughter, and Gordy's mother. Gordy was my boss, and I was his subordinate. Growing up, my parents divorced, and I lived with my mom. I guess I always yearned for a father figure. Gordy, being older and competent at his job, seemed very appealing, but I never had a chance to get close to him. He was just someone I admired from afar. However, during a team-building event, we bonded over our shared love for movies and hit it off. We started dating, and I fell head over heels for the mature and kind Gordy. About 6 months into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant. We hadn't discussed marriage yet, so I was more shocked than happy. I was anxious about how Gordy would react, but I couldn't keep it a secret forever. I mustered the courage and told him. To my surprise, he was thrilled and suggested we get married. I was overjoyed by Gordy's reaction. When I told my mom, she was a bit surprised but happy for me. My mom raised me as a single mother after my parents divorced due to my father's affair. I was only 2 at the time, so I barely remember my father. My mom worked tirelessly from dawn till dusk to raise me. Being an only child, dinner alone was lonely. But I didn't want to burden my mom. Even though she was busy, she showered me with love, and we have a great relationship. I always thought that when I got married, I didn't want my child to feel lonely. I wanted to build a warm home, so I was determined to have a loving marriage and family. Things moved quickly, and we introduced each other to our families. Gordy had lost his father at a young age and lived with his mother. The first time I met her, she was kind, but I sensed something off in her occasional cold expression. However, she was the woman who gave birth to Gordy, so I brushed off my concerns, thinking she was just nervous. We had a simple wedding with just our families. I was getting the hang of my job and wanted to work until my due date. But Gordy insisted I become a housewife, so I quit. My mom suggested I take maternity leave instead of quitting, but Gordy disagreed. He said his mother was a dedicated housewife, and he wanted the same for me, so I became a housewife. After our marriage, at Gordy's insistence, we moved in with his mother. That's when my nightmare began. I initially found comfort in having an experienced mother around, but I was naive. My mother-in-law seemed resentful, as if I had stolen her precious son. Her attitude changed completely after our marriage, and she started to torment me. Yes, my initial instincts about her were right. As for Gordy, after our marriage, he became controlling and emotionally abusive. Apparently, his late father had been a dominant figure, and neither Gordy nor his mother could defy him. Mother-in-law was not allowed to work or even go out without permission. If Gordy showed any defiance, he was beaten and berated. Their father's authority was absolute. They endured this together, and when Gordy's father passed away from an illness when Gordy was 22, they celebrated. After that, they lived happily as a duo. I believe the kind Gordy I knew before our marriage was genuine, but after seeing his mother's disdain for me, his love waned. To Gordy, his mother was more important than his wife. Whenever Gordy was cold or verbally abusive to me, mother-in-law looked satisfied. Gordy would appease her, saying, "Mother, I'm married so you can have an easier life. Jasmine will do everything for you." I think the two of them felt some twisted sense of revenge by treating me the way Gordy's father had treated them. It was utterly unfair to me, but I felt helpless. In the early days of our marriage, I suffered from severe morning sickness, sometimes unable to get out of bed. Yet mother-in-law would say, "You're exaggerating this morning sickness thing. Who do you think you are? Get up and make dinner." She even forced me to do household chores. She would make me carry heavy bags and even intentionally push me once. Gordy, of course, didn't defend me. Instead, he would say, "I'm busy working. You're probably just napping all day and you still eat the food I provide." I endured, hoping that maybe when our child was born, mother-in-law and Gordy would change. My mom, concerned about me living with mother-in-law and being pregnant, often called or messaged, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. She had raised me through hardships and always wished for my happiness. I didn't want to worry or sadden her. I always reassured her with a cheerful voice, saying everything was fine, that Gordy and mother-in-law were taking good care of me, and that I was happy. She might have suspected something but always said, "Remember, I'm on your side. Tell me if anything's wrong." Then I safely gave birth to a beautiful girl named Judith. The joy of her birth made me momentarily forget the torment from mother-in-law and Gordy. I vowed to live for Judith from that day on. My mom offered to take care of me postpartum at her home, but mother-in-law, with a smile, said, "Don't worry, we'll take good care of Judith here," denying me the chance to return to my parents. Normally, new mothers rest for a month after childbirth, but my mother-in-law had me working the day after I was discharged. Their treatment of me didn't change after Judith's birth. It got worse. Knowing I was up all night nursing, they still forced me to wake up early for chores. On top of that, I had to care for the baby. I was utterly exhausted, stressed, and sleep-deprived. Mother-in-law, seeing my worn-out state, would laugh, saying I looked like a vagrant. Every night, tears streamed down my face. Judith was my only solace. The one saving grace was that Judith looked like Gordy, so both he and mother-in-law adored her. Though their idea of adoring was just playing with her occasionally, I was relieved because I had feared they might mistreat Judith too. When Judith was about 3, I told Gordy I wanted to work outside. He scoffed, saying, "Who would hire someone like you with hardly any work experience?" Mother-in-law laughed, calling me a useless wife. In truth, I was at my limit and wanted to save money to leave with Judith, but they wouldn't let me work, and I gave up on ever leaving. Who would hire someone with so little experience? I had no money of my own, and for Judith's sake, I realized I had to endure. From then on, no matter how mother-in-law and Gordy treated me, I bore it all for my beloved daughter Judith. Even after 7 years of marriage, mother-in-law and Gordy remained the same. The only change was in Judith. From around age 4, she would sadly watch me being mistreated. When we were alone, she would hug me and say, "Mommy, just bear it a little longer. When I grow up, I'll protect you." Ever since she was little, Judith could sense the unfair treatment I endured, and it deeply hurt her young heart. Her presence alone became my beacon of hope. With mother-in-law and Gordy keeping a close watch, I couldn't freely go out. Even on the rare occasions I went shopping, mother-in-law would accompany me. However, once Judith started attending elementary school, I got the chance to step outside with just her during drop-offs and pickups. Previously, I couldn't even meet my own mother, but sometimes she would wait near the school to see us. So our meetings became more frequent. Whenever we met, my mom would ask, "Are you okay?" I couldn't tell her the truth about my situation, so I always replied, "I have Judith, I'm happy." I had also told Judith to keep our real situation a secret from my mom. Then one day, Judith expressed a desire to visit a community park a bit far from our home. She had heard from friends about a pond there with a family of turtles and was eager to see them. Gordy, being the doting father, said, "If Judith wants to go, I'll take her anywhere." So it was decided that we would visit the park on his next day off. Of course, mother-in-law would come along. The day of our trip to the community park arrived. I woke up at 5 a.m. to prepare sandwiches for the entire family. Making sandwiches took time since Gordy and mother-in-law had big appetites. While I was busy with preparations, the two of them were leisurely playing on their phones. Upon reaching the community park, it was evident that it was a popular spot bustling with families. We quickly headed to the pond to see the turtles, and sure enough, there was a cute family of turtles. Judith was ecstatic, exclaiming, "So cute." I smiled, watching her joy. Suddenly, someone forcefully pushed me from behind, and I fell into the pond. I had a traumatic experience of nearly drowning in the ocean as a child, so I was terrified of water and couldn't swim. Mother-in-law knew this because I had shared the story before. Thrown into the pond, panic overtook me as I flailed around. Judith cried out, "Mommy." Mother-in-law remarked, "Falling into a pond? What a foolish daughter-in-law," and laughed without trying to help. Gordy, laughing, took photos of me in the pond. Seeing their reactions, something inside me snapped. Fortunately, the pond wasn't too deep, and I managed to stand. Mother-in-law, seeing I was okay, said with a hint of disappointment, "It's surprisingly shallow." What a pity. At that moment, I was certain mother-in-law had pushed me. That night, anger kept me awake. I wanted revenge, but considering Judith's future, I thought it might be better to endure and stay with a financially stable Gordy. I spent the entire night thinking. The next morning, on our way to school, Judith turned to me with determination and said, "Mommy, it's okay. Divorce Daddy. Grandma and Daddy are terrible. I'm on your side." I was touched but hesitant, wondering if divorce was really the right choice. The following day, as we approached the school, I saw my mom. Judith ran to her with joy. I hurried over, curious about their conversation. My mom hugged me, saying, "Why didn't you tell me the truth? You have endured so much." Judith whispered, "Mommy, it's okay, right? I told Granny everything." Mom encouraged me, saying, "Get a divorce. It's okay, you're still young, and you can try again." She then went on to say, "You should hire a lawyer. I'll pay for the lawyer's fees." I'm sorry I didn't notice. From that day, with Judith's help, I began gathering evidence. Gordy's verbal abuse, mother-in-law's derogatory comments, everything was recorded. Unaware of this, mother-in-law and Gordy continued their behavior. Gordy's constant belittling and my mother-in-law's endless insults were all caught on my voice recorder. Unaware of this, both Gordy and mother-in-law continued their hurtful ways. Sometimes I would intentionally tell Gordy, "I want to work outside," to which he would reply, "Who would hire someone like you, idiot?" I would also act sad in front of mother-in-law just to hear her say, "You look so down." Pathetic. With these tactics, I gathered plenty of evidence. Then one day, mother-in-law, who never cared about her salt intake despite her age, suffered a stroke due to high blood pressure and became paralyzed. She was discharged from the hospital, but both Gordy and mother-in-law expected me to take care of her. "Jasmine, you'll take care of me, right? I am so pitiful." "Hey Jasmine, take care of mother. If you're rough with her, you'll regret it," Gordy demanded. I firmly replied, "I won't look after mother-in-law. She's your mother, Gordy. You take care of her." I had never talked back before, so they were momentarily stunned. But Gordy quickly yelled, "You better take care of her." The next day, Gordy left for work. I had no intention of caring for mother-in-law. I planned to ignore her completely. While I was in the living room, I heard mother-in-law calling me from her room. She sounded frantic. I didn't want to help, but I decided to check on her. She looked pale and said, "Jasmine, I need to use the bathroom." I coldly replied, "Go ahead on your own." She cried out, "How could you? Hurry up and help me." Apparently, she had forgotten to wear her adult diapers. She then had an accident and started crying from embarrassment. Filled with a desire for revenge, I didn't help. Instead, I called Gordy's workplace. When he rushed home and saw mother-in-law, he shouted at me, "I told you to take care of her." I calmly responded, "I told you I wouldn't. Have you forgotten how you both treated me?" Mother-in-law kept repeating, "You brute. You brute." I finally handed Gordy divorce papers. He was in shock. I said, "I have had enough. I want a divorce, and of course, I'll take custody of Judith." Both mother-in-law and Gordy were yelling. But when I played the voice recordings, they froze. Gordy's morally harassing commands and mother-in-law's heartless remarks were recorded. I said, "I have all the evidence. I'm confident I would win in court." Gordy muttered, "I can't believe you recorded us." Mother-in-law still shouted, "Judith won't choose you. She won't." When Judith came home from elementary school, mother-in-law sweetly asked, "Judith, who do you want to live with, Grandma or Mommy?" Judith firmly replied, "Of course, Mommy. Grandma and Daddy are always mean to Mommy. I will always live with Mommy. I hate Daddy and Grandma." The two were visibly shaken. It seemed like Gordy was really tired of being told that Judith, whom he loved so much, hated him. "Did you hear that? Judith wants to live with me. Please live peacefully together from now on." I packed my bags and left. I never returned to Gordy and mother-in-law's house. I finalized the divorce through a lawyer. According to the lawyer, Gordy couldn't care for mother-in-law, who was now paralyzed. She was placed in a nursing home, but due to her nasty attitude, no one wanted to be around her. Gordy, devastated by Judith's rejection, couldn't go to work and took a leave of absence. Now Judith, my mom, and I live together, and I'm actively job hunting. My new life is just beginning.